Welcome to the EchoCast, episode 124, The Division 3, ? This is a podcast about The Division 2, its community, news, speculation, and updates on the game. I am Bond Diesel. I do Division stuff, such as this podcast, Twitch streams, and YouTube videos, mostly about The Division, but also other gaming topics. Please take a moment to subscribe and to rate the podcast on whatever platform you listen. This episode, we will have a The Division 2 State of the Game recap, some interesting news about some massive hiring that may have something to do with Division 3, Xbox Series X being hands-on, a PS5 teardown video, and more. First, I want to thank our Patreon supporters for this month: Hassan, Christian, Darren, Tim, PK, and Dale. If you would like to support this podcast and my other content, please check out patreon.com/BondDiesel. Okay, State of the Game recap. This is one I actually would suggest that you go and watch the VOD. They just go into more depth than I'm willing to repeat. But what we had was Hamish, Johanna McKenzie talking about changes to the Summit in TU 11.1 and a new Manhunt target and apparel event. So the big changes coming to Summit seem to be a reworked menu that includes the ability to change difficulty and directives on the fly. You'll also be able to choose your targeted loot, which is a big deal and is something I actually hope comes to the rest of the game. There will also be a new project for the Summit. They're adjusting Ridgeway's Pride to buff it, make it a little bit more powerful. And they took out the windows on the doors on floor 100 so people can't hide behind them and exploit the hunters. They also did note that the firewall conflict exploit has been fixed. They did point out, I believe they said October 22nd is when they think this patch will be out. It could be later though. It just depends on how, I assume, fixes go over the next few days before they have to submit it for approval from Xbox and Sony. My thoughts overall, it was good. They did also talk a bit about the new Manhunt. It's Wraith. You will... The big news with this one is the apparel event. It is some of the better apparel I've seen. There is one item that has a bit of a texture issue, which I assume they'll fix for 11.1. But yeah, there's multiple items that are really nice. The actual outfits, I'm not a huge fan of. They're kind of stylized New York City faction outfits, but they do look good. But there's like a tactical shirt that looks honestly more like a hunter shirt than the hunter shirt they gave us, and then there's some like kind of cool tactical gray pants, and there's a whole balaclava now, like a whole face mask that some people have been able to wear with like masks or helmets or something. I wasn't able to figure that out, so I don't really know what's going on with that, but it is cool even if you just wear it on its own. Yeah, it's a good update. Johan always does a great job of kind of filling out the community stuff. It seems like Mackenzie and Bruce and Trick seem to be kind of the three-headed monster that are really working on this game right now. We haven't seen other massive people in a while that tend to make some of these decisions. I'll be touching on this after the break when we talk about some Division 3 speculation. But I really, every time they have Bruce, McKenzie, or Trick on, I'm always happy because they do a really good job of being, in my opinion, pretty blunt about what's coming, what they're doing, what they're working on. It seems like they are kind of the puppet masters at this point with the game. And I think they're doing a good job, but obviously everyone has their own opinion. Yeah, So good save game. 11.1 looks good. It looks like the summit will become a lot more replayable for people. I am still pretty determined to beat the summit in its current form before they switch it. I think I've made it to 85. I haven't played it in about a week. I've been doing other stuff, but I would like to beat it in its current form, because there will be something that's just a little bit less impressive about beating, level 100 on hard. But if that's the way I have to do it, I'm going to be totally honest with you. That's the way it's going to happen. So we'll figure it out. Okay, so with some gaming news, the two big topics are there's Xbox Series X's in people's hands, and we got a PS5 teardown video today. So on the Xbox front, we have multiple outlets and individuals and creators with the Xbox Series X. It seems like the overall feeling is that the system feels premium and works extremely well from what they're expecting. They have noted there's some NDAs in place. There's a limited number of games they're having access to right now, and I don't believe there's any, quote unquote, next gen games that are part of this testing yet. One note is that there have been some rumors about heating issues. This seems like it came from basically one kind of random tweet, and then kind of got picked up by a lot of the I don't know how to say this in a nice way, some of the fanatics on Twitter. If you've never delved into the console Twitter community, it's like an epic shit show on all sides, especially Xbox and PlayStation, where there's like entire accounts, both large and small, that just do nothing but just shit on the other console, and just it's just wild. I have my bias and my preference for sure, but yeah. So this kind of stuff gets pushed a lot when I think there's kind of an error right now that Xbox is putting out a lot of information, and giving out a lot of information. They've got consoles in people's hands, and we're seeing videos. I kind of have a feeling some of these people who run these accounts, some of the real crazy, some of the real hyper, involved people are feeling kind of like a weird anxiety. That's obviously going to change. I'm sure there's going to be PlayStation 5s in people's hands soon, and there kind of was in Japan, but we'll talk about that in a moment. From what I've seen, the vast majority of people who have the Xboxes right now are saying that it's fine. I mean, it's warm, but it's supposed to be. That means it's working. The air coming out of the top vent, and even someone who's known for being a pretty big Sony faithful, Greg Miller, was just minutes ago on their daily podcast, That Kind of Funny, talking about how during idle, it's cold, it's not warm at all. And while he's playing it, it doesn't seem overly warm compared to anything else. So yeah, I would kind of ignore a lot of that stuff going on. It seems like that's getting drummed up for no reason. But it seems like the quick resume and the load times are the big story right now. So the quick resume, people are showing how quickly you can bounce from playing one game or another, and I think it's up to 5 or 6 of them you can do at any given time. The one limitation seems to be, I'm assuming games like The Division, Destiny, other online games where you need to be connected to a server. You'll have to quick connect to the menu, and then you'll still have to load in. But Danny Pena, who's associated with Paris Lily and that whole deal, he posted a video of Division 2 loading up on an Xbox Series X from the menu to the game, and it was like a few seconds. It was nuts. Even on my Xbox One X, it doesn't load up nearly that quickly. So the quick resume seems like it's going to be great, especially for single player games. And then the load times, like I was just kind of saying, the Division 2 load time we've seen, basically every single one. There's a few games where it's say the load time is normally 2 minutes. There's a few games I've seen that it's still like a minute or a minute and a half. But I've seen some games that, like on the Xbox One X, it's it's 60 seconds to load into the game, and there's a few I've seen that it's only like 10 or 15 or even less seconds with the Series X. So that NVMe SSD is definitely doing some work. And it seems like that's the big highlight right now. It sounds like there's going to be some next gen gameplay coming soon. We did get a NBA 2K21 next gen running on Xbox Series X trailer a day or two ago. Those trailers are kind of tough. I assume it was gameplay. But I'm an Ubisoft fan, or at least I'm a Division fan, and if we've learned anything about taking trailers too seriously, then no one has. So, yeah. But yeah, Xboxes are in hands. That's exciting. I do have mine pre-ordered, and I cannot wait to get it. And then today we had a PlayStation 5 teardown video put out by Sony, Sony Japan. It was all in Japanese, so people have already dubbed it and have been doing some highlights of it. The big highlights of it are showing how you install a new SSD, or an additional SSD, as well as how you move the stand, because it can sit vertically or horizontally. For the SSD, you remove one of the outside panels. There's a cover over the SSD slot, and then you kind of slide it in and screw it down. For the stand, you unscrew it from the bottom of the vertical position. You store the screw inside of the stand. You kind of twist the stand, and then it clips onto the side of the system to let you sit it horizontally. This seems fine. I still think for a console, and the whole point of consoles, it's a little over engineered. I think the stand it's like a bit much, but that's fine. It's cool. It just seems like the amount of engineering that would go into that is only going to make these PlayStations lose even more money. So it just seems like a bit of overkill, but it's there. The SSD installation, there's a big comparison going on right now between the Xbox and how it's the proprietary chip made by Seagate, and how you literally just plug it in like any other memory card for most consoles, compared to this SSD installation. It's just, the thing is that there's no one's going to screw up the Xbox One, right? The average person, which is the idea of the console, is that it's easy. Whereas with the Sony one, people are going to screw this up. They're going to put the SSD in upside down. They're not going to buy the right one. I think that's going to happen all the time. Sony still hasn't put out a list of the approved SSDs. And when they do, that doesn't mean people are going to do it, right? So people are going to try to skirt it. They're going to try to install ones that aren't approved, and they're either not going to work, or they're going to present bad performance, or they're going to mess the system up, depending on how it's put together. So I think that obviously in the long term, I think the fact that you're going to be able to use third-party SSDs means that a year or 2 years from now, they're going to be cheaper, hopefully. Right now, the SSDs that will probably be approved by Sony are just as much, if not more, than the proprietary Xbox One. You could argue whether or not the speed difference makes that worth it, or a better deal or not. I think the average person doesn't care. They just see the same price or a worse price, and the fact that you have to install it yourself, and it's kind of a hassle. I still think the Xbox system is a better one, just for the simplicity. My big question is, as the prices go down on the third-party SSDs that Sony is going to approve, I wonder if there's going to be a scaling ability to lower the price of the Xbox proprietary memory card as well. Because if it stays at 220 as the Sony one drops down to 200, 175, 150, then there is a bit of an optics problem there. But because it's proprietary, there may not be any incentive or ability to lower the cost for that reason. So we'll have to see. That definitely may end up being a spot where Sony wins the day. But I still just kind of wonder, see, it gets real weird, because is Sony going to approve SSDs for their system purely 100% on a system of that one is fast enough so we approve it? Or are they gonna be a business and make deals and do cut deals and cut agreements and things like that, where Seagate gets a contract with them, or I guess maybe they wouldn't because of Xbox, who knows, or Western Digital or whatever, where they're only going to approve them from a certain company. I hope they don't do that because that's bad for consumers. But when you're the top dog, you can kind of do whatever you want. And when you're especially interested in making money, I think that there may be, I'm curious to how that's going to work out. Maybe there'll be 15 different producers making these things and this won't be a concern, but I think it's at least worth considering. What's also worth considering is hanging out for this mid-roll. Okay, so moving on to some Division 2 topics. The big dog in the room here is kind of ironic, actually, because we'll talk about that. So long story short, I know this because I have way too much time on my hands these days, that there was a listing posted this week for a game designer on the massive website for Malmo. And I'll talk about why that's significant in a moment. And the project listed is Studio, which is kind of generic, right? So this particular posting was specifically talking about AI behavior, but it specifically mentioned a RPG action adventure game that you'd be working on. Now there are other listings on their website currently, and I wouldn't confuse this with some listings for Massive Stockholm. Those are listed under an unannounced project. What to realize about that, I'm not aware that Stockholm has ever had anything to do with Division. So what I'm imagining is they're continuing support for Division 2. They're working on Avatar, as we all know, and there's a ton of listings for that game. I think they're working on Division 3 currently. And Stockholm, I assume, must be working on a new IP or maybe bringing back an old one. If I had to guess, I would actually say I think World and Conflict is returning in some capacity. But we'll have to wait and see. So I made a tweet about this listing and kind of said Division 3 ? And this doesn't matter at all. I'm probably having my leg pulled a bit, and that's fine. But it did get some interesting responses from people on Twitter, especially likes. Sorry, from current people in the know, such as Julian, and I even garnered a response from Hamish. But again, to be very clear, this is no confirmation of anything. They have teased me before. So, yeah. Well, I will say when I checked today, there's some more updates. There's more spots being posted essentially in the same way as this game designer. So now there's producer, rigging and animator spots, a programmer, and I believe an IT engineer posted all for that same project as Studio. Now, in theory, the Studio listing is then basically saying that we want these positions for the studio. And I will say that game designer one, I think, is the only one that specifically mentions an RPG action adventure. I think the other ones are a little more generic. So, I won't look too much into that. What I will say is the timing of this is kind of funny because I believe the last podcast was the one where I was talking about how I basically didn't think that Division 3 was happening, at least not right now, because I only saw Avatar listings. I'm positive my little podcast doesn't influence this kind of stuff at all. I wouldn't be surprised if no devs even listened to this podcast, at least not at this point. But it was... But what I talked about last time is how around this time in Division 1's development is when Division 2 started to really start to ramp up, as I'm aware or told. So it's not surprising at all that that's probably starting to happen with a supposed Division 3. Now, they've probably been thinking up Division 3 for a while, maybe even before Division 2 released, as they kind of said they did with Division 1 and 2. And these open positions don't necessarily mean that they haven't done anything and now they're going to get these people in and start on the game. If it goes the way I believe Division 2 went, there's still a a relatively large but smaller than development time team working on Division Two. Obviously, they're putting out, you know, they're doing Vanity, they're doing all the stuff with the seasons and the manhunts, but there's also a pretty good chance all of that stuff is basically done, and maybe it's been done for a while. And then the people who are still working on the game are the ones who kind of fix things up, and so on, and finish things. And so there's likely a lot of people working on a third game exclusively now, and they are basically looking for help in these positions over the next year and a half or so. What I'm gonna say is that honestly, at this point, I'm actually pretty happy with how, if this is a thing, if they are working on Division 3 and Division 3 is going to come in like 2022 or something like that, I would already say that it seems like Division 2 is still getting a lot of content and love and expansion compared to how Division 1 was treated. It's really interesting when you see people talk about Division 1 and 2 and how not very many people really acknowledge that Division 1 basically released and that content was available. They released a couple modes, and then after year one, we really didn't get anything but Westside Piers. We got classified gear and gear sets and things like that, and events, but those things were all just kind of like fluff, like sprinkled on top. We didn't get new missions, we didn't get raids, we didn't get a lot of this other stuff that we've gotten with Division 2. Now, I understand if someone's a big fan of survival and underground and stuff that, you know, the things that we've gotten even after year one of Division 2 maybe haven't been quite as satisfying. But I think simply from a content point of view, we've already gotten, I don't know, I would argue 3-4 times the amount of content than we ever got in Division 1, but not as much replayable content in some people's opinions. So what I'm curious about is, you know, my guess is that in March, when season 4 is wrapping up, whatever's happening with Fei Lao happens. I think they're going to, around the time of the 2-year anniversary of Division 2, or the 3-year or the 5-year anniversary of the franchise in general, I think there will be another Stay of the Game that pops up. We'll see Julian sitting there and whoever else, and they'll talk about Division 3. So I don't expect any actual acknowledgement or confirmation or anything of anything until then. You know, these job postings, honestly, with Division 2, they were a little more sneaky about it because the Division 1 had job listings on it up to Division 2's release. So they never took down listings. And so as they were probably ramping up for Division 2, we never even knew because those listings were just always there. So this time it was kind of unique where I and other people just happened to notice, oh, there's no listings for Division anymore. And then all of a sudden, hey, here's a bunch of listings for things that seem like they're probably for the Division. I don't expect any real hint. I would say there's a good chance that whatever is in season 4 is probably going to lead us to believe there's a Division 3 coming. I have some theories about that, but honestly, until season 4 ends, and most people have gotten to see it for themselves, what I've already read in the leaks, I don't really want to go into it. So we'll have to wait quite a while for that, a few months here. So what I really do hope is that there's a third year of some type of content. I'm not expecting another Warlords of New York. Say in March of 2021 they announce Division 3, March of 2022. I hope that season 4 doesn't end everything. I hope there's at least maybe a few more seasons, a few more manhunts. Maybe if they could throw in a few more missions, that'd be great. Because if you think about it, we actually haven't gotten new missions since Warlords of New York. So it's not like the first year of content where every few months we got, you know, the Pentagon missions and the Camp White Oak and all that stuff. So I'm hoping that there would still be, you know, something to fill in that final year because, as I've already said, I think Division 2 has done a really good job of continuing to give us content even into year 2, much more so than Division 1 did. But there was a very noticeable lull from the time they announced Division 2 until it released, and really the year before that. But other than the West Side Piers, we essentially just got those shield activities, and for the most part, those weren't really all that exciting. They were, if anything, they were kind of underwhelming, especially because there was a narrative piece to them where, honestly, it was pretty cool because they were going and talking about, essentially talking about your agent and what you did in Division 1. And it was other people kind of being like, man, that agent sure came and saved our butts, but it really didn't give us any real insight to what was coming for Division 3 or for Division 2. So, hopefully whatever they would do between, say a March announcement and a next March release would be a little bit more compelling, but we'll have to wait and see, I think. Some other topics. I threw up a Division 3, because why not? A poll about the weather and what people would like to see. There's still a few days left in the voting. I was actually surprised. Everyone seems like they really want the snow back. I actually am included. I would love to see a Division 3 take place in basically a year later than the first game. Because if you think about the timeline, the first game took place. So let's put it into our own. I'll just give a year because I can't remember if they've specified a year or not. So the first game takes place. The flu gets released. The virus gets released in November of 2016. The first game, I believe, takes place in like January-ish of 2017. The Division 2 takes place in, I want to say, like June or July of 2017. So in theory, you could see a game take place in the winter of 2017, 2018. What was interesting about this poll, though, the results already, is that people actually selected the multiple seasons thing. And I think I've briefly talked about this before, but where that problem comes into play is I would actually be down for that. The problem is that story-wise, you have to really consider that the Division 1, the story that we played through only took place over like a week or two. And then obviously we played it for 3 years, or some of us did. But, we were trapped in, we were locked in that time frame. You redo those missions and you aren't doing them after you did them the first time. You're going back in time and redoing them, right? So really the whole of Division 1 takes place in, a couple weeks, if even that. It may take place in less than that, a week or so. Division 2 is kind of the same way. When we first get to DC, we're there, and then by the time we take down the Capitol from the True Sons, it's a week or two later, maybe. Then the Black Tusk come and we go through the World Tiers and we take them out. That's maybe another week or two. And then we go to Camp White Oak, we go to the zoo, we go to the Pentagon, we go to New York City. That's maybe another week or two. So Division 2 has probably basically taken place within, the entirety of June and July and maybe into August, as we finish up Season 4. Because, we are still moving the timeline along with these manhunts post New York City. Which is what I like about Division 2 is we're getting more than this like 1 or 2 week window that we got in Division 1. We're getting some type of expansion of the lore and the universe and so on and so forth. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's even amazing. It's fine, I guess. It's better than what we got before, in my opinion. And I know a lot of people who think the story from the first game is way better are going to cringe at that. That's fine. I think both of the stories are just okay. The actual story. Now, all the side story and the lore and all of the sidelines and all of the tangled, unfinished strings, I think those are all great on both games. But, yeah, I don't know. Anyways, I just, the issue, and this whole rant is leading somewhere. The issue with having multiple seasons is that the game and the story has to support that making sense. Because when you leave it with one season, we've been playing summer of 2017 in Division 2 since 2018 when it released, right? No, 2019. And we will until a potential next game. it's a we're trapped in a time. So if you and that's why the seasons don't change. So with a Division 3 that would have multiple seasons, they would actually need to set up the story in a way where it would make sense that like years are passing, that months and years are passing instead of just a few weeks or a couple months. Now that could be interesting. Maybe Division 1 was right after the disaster. Division 2 is you're seeing things kind of start to rebuild, but there's these entities that are trying to fight for supremacy, for power. Maybe a Division 3 has like the world like kind of getting it back together, but then you still have these forces kind of fighting for power. And then you could make a game where like maybe the main story of a Division 3 is very orderly and goes through a certain thing and has a conclusion, but then the way the game concludes, the single player or the base story lends itself to, okay, now years are going to pass and you can slowly help build the world back up. And it's kind of hard to tell, especially without being able to talk about season 4 spoilers. So in next week or the next episode, I'll talk about the final result of this poll and kind of see. I really thought Winter would win. That was my selection. I want the whole next game to just be Winter again, because seeing the graphical upgrades they were able to make with Division 2, and then you combine that with kind of like that, that like nostalgic feeling of the snow and all of that. If you can and then even take that further, because hopefully a Division 3 is going to be next gen only. I really hope so. I really hope they don't try to go backwards. And if it comes out in 2022, I don't think they will, because there should be enough PS5s and Xbox Series consoles out there to be enough to sell to. I hope, because if they can push it even further, I mean, it would just be so cool. I'd be very excited to see that. Moving on, I just have some content updates. I did take this last weekend and even some of this week off from streaming. I was sicker than I've been in years over this past weekend. I honestly was kind of worried because a lot of my symptoms, gave me some concern about the COVID-19 virus. I never spiked a fever though, and I didn't have like any breathing issues. So I mostly just kind of stayed away from the little one and the wife, and I am feeling a lot better now, but I basically had zero energy all weekend and just couldn't do it. So I'm sorry for not streaming, but I will soon. I am replaying some Red Dead Redemption 2, which is my personal game of the generation. I love that game, and I'm really enjoying playing it again, even though I'm dreading the ending again because it makes me sad. For streaming, I'm not going to do that. For streaming, I've actually on my own time beaten Wraith already. So what I've been doing on the side is playing through a new playthrough of the game so I can get all of the like blue and purple gear. So I can get those appearance mods unlocked, and I may actually just start playing that on stream, because I'm honestly enjoying playing through the story again. It's a lot of fun to re-see some of those side missions and a lot of those things that happened, and watching the map kind of open up again. I haven't played through the game again since it released, and it's some good kind of side. I can still pay attention to chat, not be too distracted. So streams, at least until the next target open up, will probably be me replaying the game from scratch. I'm going to say it again. I said it last time. For my fellow Americans, my little final note here. Please vote in November. I don't feel any desire to tell you or preach to you about who to vote for. If you follow me on Twitter, for better or worse, you know where I stand. But that doesn't really matter. I just really want everyone to vote. Our voting participation of eligible voters in this country is honestly silly. It's considering how important it is and how much it does impact everything, and how much it prevents like minority rule and things like that. So whatever, if you can still register and you haven't, please go and do it. If you have registered, please vote early, vote by mail, go in and vote in person. It's your duty. I consider it my duty. And I hope you agree. If you don't, to each their own. But I think it is, and I really encourage you to go do it as well. That said, I am Bon Diesel on Twitch, where I try to stream a couple times a week. You can check out my Twitter at Bon Diesel or at the EchoCast. If you want some EchoCast or Bon Diesel merch, check out designbyhumans.com/shop/Bon Diesel, or search for Bon Diesel on the Design by Humans website. That's all I have. So until next time.